Welcome, Annalee, to the Empathy Edge podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you today as a wonderful case study in building a business and in building a team that is empathy first and people first, and showing how it can be successful, talking about all the great ROI that I always talk about, but you're actually living it. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's really wonderful to be here. Definitely preparing for this podcast. I was able to listen to a lot of episodes, and you've had some incredible interviews. And I feel like just in preparation to be here to talk about how we embrace empathy, I learned so much. So I really appreciate this podcast and having an opportunity to speak on it. And hopefully some of what I have to say resonates.
Amazing, amazing. So we're going to start where we always start, as you know. We're going to start with your story. So right now,
Okay.
you are CEO and co-founder of a creative agency that puts on world-class events and experiences.
Mhm.
But how did you get here? And especially, how did you get to where you are in terms of your leadership and CEO philosophy around running the company the way you do?
So I think to understand a little bit about the level of curiosity that I have about human beings is to just quickly go back to my upbringing. And I was
Uh-huh.
raised by two parents. My father was a recruiter for tech executives back in the 80s and 90s. And my mother is a psychologist and a family and marriage therapist. So
Mm-hmm.
right from the get, I had an opportunity to be curious about human beings and how they worked. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it very much was, my mom would love to dive into deep conversations about behavior. And then I think my dad just modeled and just offered the curiosity level that I had growing up.
Yeah.
So that I think was the base because I've been obsessed with the way people work since the very beginning. And that parlays directly into the fact that I now own and run a company that is protecting and promoting human to human connection through events and experiences. So,
Yeah.
there's some a bit in between, the more technical bits as I've made my way from Southern California, where I was born, where I was admittedly very much in a bubble. So I didn't have a lot of exposure to other types of people with other upbringings, people from other countries, like just differing perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was seeking that kind of ever since I left home. And
Mm-hmm.
I found a career in events and recreation and hospitality, which just came out of wanting to go into business because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was actually a pretty terrible student, to be very honest, but I made it.
You're
I have a
proof they can
degree.
succeed. Yeah, exactly.
I'm proof that education isn't necessarily for everybody for
Right.
like a level of success. But I went to Cal Poly. Shout out to them. They do an amazing job, and most
Hmm.
of their education is through learn by doing. So I had a lot of exposure there. And then
Hmm.
I made my way to San Francisco, and I happened to be there for 16 years and through the tech boom. So like
Oh,
being
yeah.
in a place where I got to watch. I mean, regular conversations on the bus were about starting companies or
Hmm.
start or creating a product. So like just being in that space of curiosity just continued to allow myself to blossom. And so
Hmm.
that's essentially kind of how like I personally got to where I got. But
Yeah.
hospitality has always been a through thread. I worked in hotels for a long time. I, planned events. I've been a part of communities, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So all of that together got me where I am today.
And now you're running your business from Mexico City. So are
I
you a
am.
remote first business?
We've always been a remote first business. So working in hospitality, working in hotels, I mean, I had to show up in a suit and stockings. So like I when I left, and I left definitely out of a moment of desperation. I was overworked, undervalued, and just really like not feeling like I was a piece of myself. And I think your listeners can probably relate to that, whether they like in any
Hmm.
of their jobs, there are moments in
Hmm.
which you like don't feel like you're really representing yourself at all or the
Yeah.
person you would like to be. And I
Hmm.
think that was the beginning of me really leaning more into empathy and like, how can I find that in my everyday when I'm stressed out of my mind
Hmm.
and everybody is expecting everything from me. And because I'm a high performer, I'm kind of
Hmm.
punished for it. So
Hmm.
that drove me out to start my own thing. Both my parents were entrepreneurs at some point in their lives. Dad
Hmm.
was quite successful in that, and so I always had it as an option. I don't think a lot of people look at it as an option. And
Hmm.
actually, I have a side a side passion project called Follow the Founder, where I do actually share like everyday stories of founders. So like to
Oh, I love it.
make it more accessible as an option if working for somebody else or working underneath an organization just isn't for you. But all in all, whatever I have to say today can be applied towards you starting your own thing or like as your own business or you creating your own entrepreneurship within a larger organization.
Okay, so much in there that I
Sorry.
love. No, don't be sorry. It's amazing. First of all, we're going to put a link to follow the founder
Great.
your show notes so people can check that out. But I think, this theme of what you're talking about is exactly why I do the work I do. And we've got
Mhm.
all these people with potential, all these human beings that because of their work environment, because of the way their leader is leading in a negative way, we
Mhm.
don't get the benefit of their innovation, of their passion, of their engagement. And I often cite this study by Catalyst, which was a study done a few years ago where they interviewed thousands of employees and they separated them into the employees that said they had an empathetic leader and those that said they didn't. And my listeners may have heard me talk about this study before, but it's related to your point because they asked them the same questions about work life integration, about could they be
Mhm.
innovative at work? Did they feel like their environment was inclusive? And the deltas between the group that had an empathetic leader and didn't are startling. And the one that always gets me from a very pragmatic point of view is that I can be innovative at work it was over 60% for the people that were
Mhm.
in the team that had an empathetic leader. For those that didn't have an empathetic leader, it was 13%.
I'm
And
not
I'm thinking,
surprised.
what capital asset would any shrewd investor only want to be getting 13% of the value out of? Right. So, like when we talk about empathy having an ROI and empathy having a bottom line, your story exemplifies that because you are a high performer. You now run your own company and you left an environment because you were overworked and undervalued. And so culture matters and leadership matters. And I'm getting on my soapbox with you, even though I'm preaching to the choir. So tell me a little bit
Preach it.
about, I know, how have you intentionally built your business given that philosophy? Can you give us a few strategies or even tactics you've put in place in your business model and how you run the company because of that philosophy of putting people first?
Yeah, I absolutely can. You know, I'm a firm believer in seeing in that everything trickles down. Like regardless of if you want to have a flat organization, it's still just like never flat. So what I've both my business partner and I actually had really not great examples of leadership or mentorship or management
Right.
prior to starting this company together. And so our motivation initially was to just build somewhere we want to work.
That wasn't what they did.
And that was not what they did. So my first tactic was to take everything that I didn't like and figure out what the opposite and or what the counter was to
Hmm.
that. And I mean, it sounds simple.
No, but like,
I'm
what are
not
some
necessarily a
examples of that?
person
Yeah.
in that, no idea is a bad idea. And I'm always open and willing to listen. I can be sold, my mind can be changed. I am not rooted only in what I believe is best because I'm a huge believer in hiring people that are smarter than me. So, people that can influence me. Once you get to a certain level of leadership, you don't have as much time for your continuing education or learning on the job. Like it is, you're learning from other people. So making sure that I always admire the people that I bring on to my team. Additionally, and that was when we started expanding. I think initially what we did when it was just the two of us and even adding a third and a fourth was, I mean, my business partner and we set up counseling in the beginning, like it was marriage. Like we had a life coach that was quite transformative for both of us that we shared, and we decided to do sessions together so that we could better understand like what are each other's triggers, where do we both feel insecure.
Uh-huh.
So and it was uncomfortable. Like I had to say, because we were the type of life coaching we work with, there's a little bit of like a trance aspect to it, and like I had to really say the deepest darkest fears I had in front of my business partner. And
Uh-huh.
some of it was maybe not even complimentary, but at least it was out in the air. So
Hmm.
starting with a trance transparency to a degree. I think honesty and honesty is more what I mean when I say transparency. There's definitely a
Mm-hmm.
level of transparency that you need to like not do at work, but
Right. Right.
um that was huge in the beginning. And then we took that care and understanding and empathy for each other
Mm-hmm.
and then had that for each of our employees as they joined us. And as
I love
well as
it.
our contractors, as well as
Mm-hmm.
our vendors, as well as our clients. Like, we don't treat anybody differently. Like, you're not on the inside necessarily at Bash Creative. We're all in this together. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what allows it all to seep out.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
So those are kind of the beginning. I'd say currently, to ensure that we do bring in the right people, we
Mm-hmm.
go through we take a lot of time to interview and recruit.
Great.
We're looking for aligned values, not aligned ideals, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I
I love.
want people with different perspectives on my team. I want to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was early because I know I don't know what I don't know.
Right. And that's what makes you an empathetic leader. This is speaking exactly to the first two pillars of my 5 pillar framework in my last book, which is self-awareness and self-care. And the
Mm,
self-awareness part, I mean, verbatim, you were talking about what you went through with your counseling experience with your partner, which I think is genius because it's a relationship. You might
oh yeah.
need relationship counseling. But this idea of being aware of what, not just your strengths and your weaknesses, but what are your emotional triggers?
Mhm.
And what are the things that you need to recognize are coming? Like be able to have that moment of pause and that moment of response to say, I now know what that insecurity or that emotional trigger feels like in my body, and I'm feeling it coming up. So I can stop myself. I can pause myself. That's so important for understanding what we bring to the interaction. You know, when people complain about their teams, it's like, okay, well, the common denominator there is that you are leading the team and you're interacting
Mhm.
with everybody. And is it really possible that they're all bad workers? You know, is that really
No,
reality? No, there's
not at
probably
all.
something there. And the fact that you are open and curious and you do the perfect thing that I talk about all the time, which is you have to put ego aside to embrace
Mhm.
empathy. And show me a leader who thinks they have all the answers, and I'll show you a leader who's irrelevant. Because
Mhm.
to your point, there's always something new to learn. And the fact that
Yes.
so much of your foundation of your company, this is why I love this story, is rooted in how the two of you were interacting with each other first, before you brought on a team, before you expanded, before you started hiring people.
Mhm.
And I know not everyone's in a position like they might think, oh, it's too late, but it's not. You can take the time to do that for your team, for your business partner, if you're in business with someone. If you're an executive, maybe the C-suite team needs to go to a little counseling together to figure out how they
Sure.
complement each other. So,
Oh, it would be so helpful to do
I
that.
mean,
Absolutely. I mean,
seriously.
we got to talk about each other as people and,
Yeah.
what your relationship with money, your relationship with your family, your relationship with conflict, like all these things are real in your entire life and they
Mm-hmm.
are amplified in business. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
if you have insecurities or you're coming from a place of scarcity in any of those areas, it's just going to seep into all of your conversations, the way you show up, like what your
Mm-hmm.
trauma responses are. And I
Yeah.
think what's so interesting that I learned a long time ago, but was recently reminded of, is that honestly, in leadership, there's a lot of fight or flight moments. Like, I don't know what I'm doing all the time. And especially being a founder, I've never
Mm-hmm.
done. Almost every day I'm doing something I've never done before.
Mm-hmm.
And when you freak out and you go into fight or flight, you lose 70% of the ability to use your brain.
Yep.
So, like, you only have 30% left. And that 30% is very concentrated on getting rid of danger in any way
It's
possible,
concentrated
not
on
necessarily.
survival. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not the best route.
Yeah.
Usually, that's not, usually, you don't show up your best self in that. And
Yeah.
so, learning what that looks like and what those triggers look like, especially in the people that are leading with you or the closest in your
Mm-hmm.
organization, is, I think, such an advantage
Mm-hmm.
because then you can show up for each other.
Yeah.
We're all going to
Yeah.
get there. We're all going to have
It
these moments.
it's funny because I worked in Silicon Valley during the first tech boom and bust, and then the second
Mhm.
bust. And it's just so funny because the way that people try to solve problems of performance is, throw more salespeople at it, or introduce a new
Mhm.
product, or spend more money on advertising. And I'm not saying in all cases that some of that is not valid, but the
Sure.
first place we should be looking is culture and leadership.
Yeah.
Like what's going on in the company. And I feel like boards of directors miss that opportunity and they're looking for a quick operational fix. Oh, if we do this, then sales should go up next quarter. If we do this, then we'll cut our costs next quarter. But sometimes it's just a leadership problem. Sometimes it's just a culture
Yeah.
problem.
Or the team needs a little reset. And instead of
Yeah,
investing in a new person, invest in someone coming and doing a sound bath. Like give your team some respite.
exactly.
Like that's so
Yeah,
much cheaper than an additional headcount.
totally.
And giving your team tools to manage their stress, giving your team tools to communicate more effectively, giving your team training and tools and investing back in them. Take that one headcount and invest back into your team. And
Mm-hmm.
you are now allowing them to actually grow instead of just rely on their past experiences and traumas.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was actually the next question I was going to ask you is how have you built the thriving business? And you've talked a lot about deeply investing in your team. So it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like those are some of the ways that you think about it. Do you invest in continuous learning? Do you invest in like what kinds of benefits are great benefits that your team appreciates for their own mental health and their own, I guess, just desire to be seen and heard? What
Mm-hmm.
can you give us some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my company has gone through some serious peaks and valleys in the
Oh
last
yeah.
couple of years, considering the pandemic. Many have, but
Mm-hmm.
as an example, just for like context, we plan events that are 400 to 5,000 people. For a year and a half, over 500 people was illegal in most of the United States for
Mm-hmm.
gathering.
Mm-hmm.
So we had we had to figure out ways to just keep our team sane and busy regardless of the work and of course the stress that was going on. And so we actually
Mm-hmm.
started introducing, the first thing that we did was we introduced crappy hour, which was during the like heat of the pandemic, and it was a
Yeah.
safe space outside of their current like surroundings that they could come, let let go, get things off their chest, no judgment. We could just, talk about the things we were worried about, talk about the
Uh-huh.
thing. Like it was just a safe spaced event.
Mm-hmm.
It turned into doing silly things together. I think
Mm-hmm.
doing silly stuff together in any capacity is super important. People
Mm-hmm.
need moments of levity in work, regardless of the work. You can be a scientist, you could be a salesperson, like you need moments of levity. And
Yeah.
so being silly with your team and letting that wall down and not
Mm-hmm.
worrying about how you show up makes you more human, makes them respect you more. So we infuse at least once a month a virtual, because we're a completely distributed team. We've never worked in the same office or together. And we do virtual. Now we do team time. And depending on what's going on, because our businesses can be very seasonal,
Mm-hmm.
um, we will bring in we will use that team time to be applicable to what the team or the majority of the team is going through. You can't meet everybody's needs all the
Of
time, but the
course. Of
majority,
course.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, in moments where they're working insane hours, we will do, as I mentioned, a sound bath, like, because they're probably not going to take that time for themselves. Like they've got other people to take care of. They've got other things on a long list that they've been ignoring. So
Mm-hmm.
like forced time, not forced, but
Right. Encouraged.
very encouraged, very
Yeah.
accessible time
Yeah.
that's to take and just relax.
Mm-hmm.
Or we've brought in a hypnotherapist to talk about self-soothing techniques in a moment of stress. Or
Mm-hmm.
we brought in somebody to talk about resilience, and what are some characteristics of that, and then also
Mm-hmm.
ways that you can practice it in your everyday life. And then sometimes we've done like a murder mystery where we're all assigned characters and
Oh
we
my
show
gosh, I
up.
love it.
and, and sometimes we just get on and have no plans and we talk about our favorite things from Trader Joe's. So like
Mm-hmm.
but it is a time that everybody can come together and drop everything. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's probably the easiest thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in this increasingly digitized world, increasingly dispersed, teams, there is nothing more important than coming together in real life. And you
Yeah.
can do that virtually, but I really highly recommend together in person so you can
Hmm.
actually like use all of the senses of a human
Right.
and connect with people and do silly things.
Yeah. And you can be strategic. Like status meetings don't need to be in person
Absolutely.
every week, but this is a whole other rant I have about the art, return to work mandates. And I get
Yeah.
it. I am an extrovert. I get the need to be around people, but let's be intentional about it. We can be strategic. So it sounds like your company is very strategic about when you bring everyone
Yeah.
together. Is that true? Is it yearly?
Yeah,
Is it
absolutely.
every quarter? What's your cadence?
We we do a year. So because a lot of our team does get to work together per project when we're on site for an
True.
event,
Yeah.
they do have interpersonal interaction for
Hmm.
sure. But what we want is a time that's dedicated to giving them learnings as well as
Hmm.
giving them respite, as well as giving them
Hmm.
some levity. And so we
Hmm.
do that at least once a year.
Love it.
And we've done that. I mean, even when, cash flow wasn't necessarily there, we prioritized it because
Hmm.
immediately you can see the results. I mean, immediately people
Yeah.
step higher into leadership positions. Immediately they use the relationships that they've created. And
Yeah.
if we also incorporate some workshopping of, working on the company versus in the company,
Hmm.
they feel a sense of ownership and accountability of the trajectory of this team,
Of
of this
course.
company, of the
Yeah.
success.
Well, that's how
Yeah.
you get the buy-in is if they're part of it, that transparency of decision making,
Mhm.
decisiveness is one of my pillars in the model.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean you're a dictator. It just means you're transparent about how decisions are made and you're open to input. And even if you end up making a decision that not everybody likes, because there is no decision that will please everybody, can you explain it in an empathetic way? Can you say,
Mhm.
Annalee, we really liked your idea. Here's why we couldn't go with it. But
Yeah.
please keep those ideas coming because it sparked a really great conversation for us to think about. Now, at least you're in a position to disagree, but commit because your opinion was fairly factored into
Mhm.
that decision. So I love that. And thank you for validating the fifth pillar of joy, which was one of the
Oh
pillars
yeah.
of empathetic and effective leadership, because that was the secret sauce when I was writing the second empathy book that I was like, what's missing? I had four pillars initially. And I was like, no, interviewing all these people and trying to deconstruct the recipe, something was missing. And it was levity. And that's when I say joy, it doesn't mean you're the funniest team on the planet. It just means
No.
there's camaraderie, there's levity. To your point, our brains operate better when they're not under stress and fear and anxiety. And so, back to the point I made earlier about do you want people operating on all cylinders to come up with creative solutions and to come up with
Mhm.
innovative products and services? Yes. And so, some leaders who have thought that that's a waste of time, that's nonsense, that's actually where the magic happens. And that's where you get the creativity and you get the competitive edge.
It solves so many problems. Honestly, it also helps with just communication in general across teams. The
Yeah.
more opportunities they have get to practice that in a really
Hmm.
respectful and safe environment, the more they're going to take it upon themselves. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we practice brainstorming for our work together a
Hmm.
lot collaboratively. And I think that sets the stage also for like no idea is a bad idea. We
Hmm.
all have a voice. We can all come to stage. I think another big piece as a leader though is that I'm in it with them. If we're
Hmm.
learning something, I'm at the training. I'm learning too. Not allowing, I'm encouraging the facilitator to pick on me, in front of
Right.
them. I don't mind not knowing something. I don't, in
Right.
fact, I want to learn alongside of them.
Hmm.
I share my failures often. And I talk a lot about what I learned from them.
Hmm.
And I also participate in all the brainstorming. Like there's no piece of the work that's below me in any way. There are pieces of the work that I am more valuable at, but
Right. Of course.
I still participate wherever I can. I think it's important because,
Yeah.
a bad idea or a non-useful idea can spark a great one.
That's sometimes where the epiphanies happen, right? It's the like,
Yeah.
this is crazy, but I'm going to throw it out there, right? Or you get the person who's really skeptical. This used to happen in my brand strategy workshops all the time. The person that didn't actually want to be there was the
Mhm.
person that ultimately had the big idea, right? So, but what you're saying is so valuable and I really want listeners to pay attention to this because you can talk about all these things all you want, but if you don't walk the talk and you don't model it for your people, it doesn't matter what you say. And we're
I
talking
agree.
about everything from it's okay to make mistakes to you really need to take care of yourself and take your time off. But if you're a leader who's working 80 hours a week, that doesn't give anyone permission to say, I, I can take my time off. You have to model that for people. And another beautiful thing you're modeling for your people is that self-awareness piece around
Hmm.
I need to do some work on myself and see how I show up. You're encouraging them because you're showing them a model of, oh, this is how you find success here.
Hmm.
And they have permission.
Yeah.
So instead of you just saying, you should go to the leadership training or you should go take your time off or you should attend that fun event. When you're there with them, it speaks
Hmm.
volumes.
You have to show up. You
Yeah.
have to show up. There's so many organizations. So we plan events, internal organizate for internally for them. And well, I can't, name drop many of them. You can go to our website and see many of them. But we're talking about global organizations with 180,000 people, cover 36 countries. Like, we work with some of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest names.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest challenges they have is getting leadership to the events. And
Yeah.
so these companies are spending conservatively millions of dollars on these
Yeah.
events.
Yeah.
And all the people really want is an opportunity to like shake the hand of the VP
Yeah.
or to be able to see the VP look like a human and acting like a human.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that it might feel like a waste of time, but like just them seeing you in the space has a ripple effect. And if I could
Mm-hmm.
encourage every single one of the clients that we work with and any of the future clients we work with to be able to do that, you know, you're going to see so much more loyalty, so much more buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
And so just showing up is really important.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to really quick when you talked about working so many hours, because I actually think this is a really big challenge for leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree in modeling behavior, but I think some of the modeling can be just self-awareness because your job is different than everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting because me and my business partner, we're opposites, which is wonderful and then also difficult at the same time, but overwhelmingly wonderful. And
Mm-hmm.
she has to work a lot in
Mm-hmm.
what she has to do. She likes to work a lot,
Mm-hmm.
although that's getting a little bit better with the longer that we're in these roles. And I don't like I tap out. I know for myself that you give me 8 hours in the day, like my brain, I'm not giving you valuable work in return
Right.
after that.
Right.
She can be on hour 16 and just nailing it. So we're just
Mm-hmm.
very different in this way. And it was something that we had to come to terms with when we became partners was that, look, it's not going to look the same on each of us. What that translates to my team is that we model two different approaches to working.
Right.
And I think if you're that person, because I've also met plenty of entrepreneurs or plenty of executives that they actually really enjoy work, like work is literally their hobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
I personally do not understand this, but it is for
Yeah.
many. And who am I to cheat them of like doing the thing they like to do?
Yeah.
So I think you just as a leader need to explain to your team, to give them the knowledge, the insight, show them that you're self-aware, saying, hey, you may see me sending emails in the middle of the night, but like that works for me. And I want you to also have the autonomy to do what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
So while what I'm doing specifically may not work for you, you can also find your own
Mm-hmm.
path to like where your zones of genius are, when
Right.
your peaks of energy are. And
Right.
as a leader, you not only have to do the work to lead the team, but you have so many other responsibilities. You're wearing many
Mm-hmm.
hats. So it's understandable that you would have to work a lot of hours. I think
Yeah.
that's a really hard thing for leaders to come to terms with is that it's okay that you're working a lot. You just need to make sure your team
You need to
understands what your
communicate.
expectation is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up because that is true. And I think it's about transparency and communication. And
Mm-hmm.
um, you're absolutely right. This is where the self-awareness pillar comes in. What works for you? And let's have a conversation about it versus assumptions, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
assume you're not working 8 hours, Annalee, because you're lazy, because you haven't told me, whatever, whatever script or narrative you tell yourself.
Mhm.
Or I'm going to assume I'm not allowed to take a weekend off to be with my kids because the CEO is working straight through the weekend and I'm getting all these emails at all hours. There's so many things that just communication and clarity, another pillar, can solve for us. And you're making me think, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes. A year or so ago, I got the opportunity to interview Claude Silver, who is the chief
Mhm.
heart officer at VaynerMedia. And she is actually coming out with a book called Be Yourself at Work, which I'm very excited. I'm going to be interviewing her again about that. But she talked about, the fact that their CEO, Gary Vaynerchuk, who people may
Mhm.
know from the internet and know from his media companies, he is a workaholic. And she mentioned this in the
Oh
interview.
yeah.
She said he loves the work, like he's doing it all the time. And she has had, sessions with employees who are killing themselves to try to be like Gary. And she always tells them, you don't have to be like Gary. Like, we didn't hire you to be Gary. We hired you to be you. So, what
Mhm.
works for you? If leaving, to go coach your kid's soccer game at 4 p.m., 2 days a week is what you need to do, all you need to do is communicate that to us.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's not about modeling, but they're very open about that. And they're very emphatic about making sure that people understand there's more than one way to show up,
Mhm.
and that you have to do what works for you. So thank you for reminding us of that again. Because,
Yeah.
sometimes I use that example as a blanket example, but I think it has to do with being able to communicate and not assuming people know that they can be who they are. It's being emphatic and being deliberate about letting people know they have permission to do those things. So thank you for bringing that up. That's awesome. Okay, I want to get to
Absolutely.
brass tacks for a second because not for a second, for a couple minutes here, because we're talking about all these wonderful things and all these amazing things you do, and you're describing a workplace that everybody wants to work in.
Great.
Let's talk about the actual ripple effects on performance, on bottom line, and how you measure it. So you've been leading the company in this way. It is, it sounds like it's a very entrenched philosophy. What has that meant to your company in terms of performance, in terms of, whatever revenue percentages you want to share with us, and in terms of retention and engagement? Can you share anything about that with us?
Yeah, I definitely can. And I would say about ROI in a smaller company, we are less, I mean, we are data driven, but we don't have to prove ourselves as often.
Right.
So I would
You're not
say
reporting to
that
the street. Yeah.
I'm not reporting to the street. Yeah. I mean, I can see it
Yeah.
in our bottom line in the sense that, our team outside factors completely taking control of maybe a moment in time for us, but not forever.
Uh-huh.
Our team has been able to double our revenue year over year, every year,
That's great.
if not more.
Hmm.
So, do we get some more team members in there? Absolutely. But, for the most part, my team's only 11 people.
Hmm.
And we handle massive books of business. We do about 20 engagements a year. And like I said, with that team, we've been able to grow it year over year. So,
Hmm.
bottom line wise, it's a pretty simple answer. We
Yeah.
keep going up, and it is not because I've had the same one salesperson the entire time. So
Yeah.
it's not like my sales team is getting much bigger. In fact, it used to be mostly me selling.
Hmm.
Again, as a small company, but now my salesperson has over 80% of the book of business, which is insane and
Hmm.
amazing. It's really great
Yeah.
for me. Um, she's had an empathetic leader, so it's really helped her grow
Yeah.
and take
Yeah.
things off. But I actually went back to my team yesterday to ask them,
Uh-huh.
because while I have no problem representing what we've
Hmm.
done, I want to know from them what they see empathy as,
Hmm.
and what they feel is the output in
Right.
relation to
I
that.
love this.
um because to me, empathy shows up in two ways: as kindness and curiosity. Really, like, that's the way I display empathy. I think you can display it in a lot of different ways, but that's how I
Hmm.
do it. So
Hmm.
curiosity is really, really part of it.
It's the number one trait of empathic people, just so you know.
Great.
There you go.
Wonderful. So some of the
Because you
ways
don't
that it
guess,
shows
you don't
up.
guess what someone's thinking. You ask and and you get
Yeah,
curious. Right.
I used to make a lot, the me who loved analyzing people previously used to make a lot of assumptions. And it wasn't actually really until the pandemic and where everything became quite polar that I realized that, wait a second, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
So now I went and side tangent became a digital nomad for 3 years to gain more perspective.
Hmm.
And that was driven from my curiosity. So,
Hmm.
kind of the key call outs that the team came back to me with, which thank goodness they validated a lot of what I already think, but
Yeah.
is that having curiosity for different perspectives allows them to be more creative. So
Hmm.
they aren't just finding like, what is the quickest route to the deliverable or the outcome, but what is the most effective, what's the most efficient, what's the most fun, what's
Right.
gonna, what they're looking at from different perspectives. And because we do
Hmm.
events, we have a very wide variety of people that are attending these, and it's absolutely necessary for us to consider what's every type of person's experience will be there so that
Right.
we can anticipate for them. So
Hmm.
this curiosity of learning is really important to them. And so they really just expand their minds and are
Hmm.
more accepting people.
Hmm.
Um, each person is allowed to be who they are and show
Hmm.
up their own way. And we do things like DISC assessments, or we used insights previously to try to understand people more at a core, but we also allow
Hmm.
them to talk about, what they resonate with that and what they don't, because at the end of the day, it's just a test. But
Hmm.
everyone being able to show up in their own way means that they don't have to try to be me. They don't have to try to be my business partner. They just need to
Hmm.
try to be themselves. And we just give them we're a sounding board. We are the bumper lanes. We give them opportunities and options, but we're not
Hmm.
dictating like you must show up this one way. And
Hmm.
so I think that gets them further faster because they're
Yeah.
not fighting against who they
I was just going to
naturally
say, yeah,
are.
they're not fighting against a way that's constricting them. They're going with their flow, in other words.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're learning self-awareness. And
Hmm.
so what self-awareness comes into play in communication with others, it comes into play with understanding what are your superpowers and what are your areas of opportunity. In fact, at our
Hmm.
last retreat, our last two retreats, we've
Hmm.
done full sessions on your superpowers and your areas of opportunity, not only from what you think, but
Hmm.
what from the team observes.
Hmm.
And so, working on self-awareness.
Yeah.
It allows for them to seek continuing education. We don't have to mandate it. So
Hmm.
that's really great. They're
Hmm.
looking to fill the holes of knowledge or experience or skill set and then bringing it to the table to us. So
Hmm.
that saves me literal time and literal money on making the
Hmm.
wrong decisions.
Hmm.
Um, and then building trust. We not only can build trust internally, but we have to build trust with people immediately
Yes.
often because
Yes.
one show can be 100 new vendors. So and we are actually just very experienced project managers at the end of the day. We are not delivering literally anything except for we are
Hmm.
managing all the deliverables. So
Hmm.
we have to have these people trust us and want to
Yeah.
work for us. And so teaching our team how to build trust and what trust really looks like to them
Hmm.
allows them to then have effective and efficient relationships that are in delivering our end product.
Hmm.
So that's massive. And that translates in actual negotiated savings for our clients.
Hmm.
Um, so much so that we often are able to cover all of the cost of us
Hmm.
by negotiated savings because these vendors and venues love working with us, even if it's a
Hmm.
brand new city we've never been to, never worked with them before.
That's amazing.
Um, and so, the ripples go out so far. That's why I think they're so incredibly difficult to measure
Yeah.
in a way that's holistic. I can only really talk about how it's affected our finances, but
Hmm.
when we're able to save 10% off the top of the line of a
Hmm.
multi-million dollar show, that's not small amount of money,
No,
you know?
no,
So
that's
so
phenomenal.
those are the ways in which it works for the most
Yeah,
part for us. I mean, I could give you many other examples,
I
but
know,
this
but
is a
I'm
lot of
so
what they
glad.
shared.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked your team that question. And this is
Yeah.
directly from them and what enables them to do what they do and work their magic. And some of that is, numerical, but some of that is
Mhm.
anecdotal and some of it is knock-on effect as well. And that's why,
Mhm.
when I talk to companies and I speak to audiences, one of the most popular questions I get is, well, how do we measure empathy? And I say, well, you actually shouldn't be measuring empathy for empathy's sake. You should be adding empathy as an ingredient to increase the KPIs you're already tracking. That's actually what
Absolutely.
it's about. You still have to grow, you still have to deliver, you still have to make money in the end. That's your organization, unless you're a nonprofit, right? But measure the things you're already measuring and add empathy as, you know, lighting fuel. Like
Mhm.
ignite it and see what happens, and then do your before and after and see if there's a difference. If that's really what you care about. Yes, you can measure in pulse surveys and in engagement
Mhm.
surveys, do I feel seen, heard, and valued? Do I feel like this is a welcoming, inclusive environment? Those are all important to the empathy equation, but it doesn't mean you throw your KPIs out the window or your bottom line.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. And I think what how it affects the KPIs more so is that if you create the safe environment in which communication is open because
Mm-hmm.
empathy has been used,
Mm-hmm.
then your team's likely going to flag much sooner when you're not going to make your goals. And so you have the
Yep.
ability to pivot
Mm-hmm.
or correct. So that's
Right.
massive.
Right.
um and these teams, like the retention too. I mean, shout out definitely to my team who has been through it with us. I mean, we've hit the
Yeah.
bottom twice in the last 5 years and then
Yeah.
reinvented ourselves. So, but like we needed a lot out of them. And I will say that, like, although I'm sure plenty of people used pandemic stories, but this is like very special, is that when we lost all of our revenue in one day, and
Mm-hmm.
we had just hired a few people. This is May of 2020.
Oh God.
And we were just, quite honest, and they showed that, what we were going through. And that's where the empathy was I didn't try to placate them and tell them everything's gonna be fine. Like I was like,
Right.
stuff is bad right now. Like
Yeah.
it's not great. And here are
Yeah.
the things that we're doing to try to fix it. And
Yeah.
here's how we're correcting as leadership. But we just
Mm-hmm.
need you to be kind back to us
Mm-hmm.
because we're figuring this out. And like, this is,
100%.
although we don't want to say it, unprecedented. So
Right.
there's, I know that word, but
Take your
tell me
shot.
another word we can use.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in return, what was most beautiful was we had a good handful of people that work for us that came and said, I can afford to volunteer for you for the next couple of months. I can afford to work full time at half pay. I can afford
Yeah.
to go on unemployment and still do projects for you. Like
Right.
we had people trying to help solve the problem with us when,
Right.
I mean, I was in fight or flight. I was probably less of my brain available at the moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was massive for us.
But
I mean, that
that's what
really made us
happens.
want to fight for them.
Yeah. And that's what happens when you build that foundation. I spoke to a
Mhm.
C-suite leader for the book who talked about the fact that, he spends the time. And he's a very analytical, data-driven guy. He's worked for
Mhm.
CIOs, he's, been in programming, and he worked his way up to the C-suite. And he said, I spend the time on the joy, on the camaraderie, on the how's it going? What do you need? On the clarity, on the communication. He goes, because then when I make a big ask, they know I'm asking for a reason.
Mhm.
They can trust me. And that's when you get loyalty like what you experienced, because it's
Mhm.
it's not something, you don't add the empathy in the crisis. You build the foundation of it, you build that kind of culture so it can be resilient to the
Mhm.
crisis.
Mhm.
So what a powerful story to share,
That's
that
really
because
cool.
that's the kind of thing you get, and we can talk about like the research studies that show that people would, work more hours for less pay if it was for an empathetic leader. Not that we want that to be the ongoing norm, but the fact
No.
that they will, if you're in a crunch time, if you really need
Mhm.
them, that's where people will go into battle for you.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Well, do you have a final parting thought for maybe what you've done that you wish other people would do within their organizations, big or small?
I mean, it's hard to get it all into one. I think the
Hmm.
thing that resonates with me the most is to just drop the ego. It's
Thank you.
so it's so much easier. And on the other side of letting go of the ego, I mean, look, I think that a little bit of my imposter syndrome has done me real good on showing up as a whole human and not and
Uh-huh.
like been able to let go of the ego because I don't have it. But get rid of that, because if you can lead like as your whole human self, And that's the practicing what you preach, like really believing in what you're bringing to the team. Like, start with yourself, work on yourself, do what you need to be better at home, better at work, go to therapy, like whatever it is. That will all, I mean, I don't work by frameworks. I don't work by, I don't think, I mean, it's nice to have as like an anchoring point, but I don't think it's necessary personally. Like, if you can just continue to try to make yourself a better person, it'll show up everywhere, and you're going to mess up and it's okay. And, tell people, hey, I messed up. Like, just have accountability to it. It's People are very, very forgiving, and they want to work for people that feel like them.
Mm-hmm. I love it. What a great way to end this. This has been so good to just hear this, case study in action about
Thank you.
about the ROI of empathy and how, effective leadership leads to good things. It will lead to all the things that you want if you can embrace human-centered leadership. That's what my work is all about. So I appreciate having you here and sharing your story. We're going to have all your links in the show notes, but for anyone that's
Great.
on the go, where's the best place they can find out more about you and your company's work?
So I think both going to follow the founder, because that's a lot about who I am as a person. I
Mm-hmm.
keep, who I am out of our company for Bash Creative often, because
Mm-hmm.
we're much more than just me. But or find me on LinkedIn. I would say it really helps to put a little note in there, because I do get solicited a whole heck of a lot. So like, just say, hey, I heard you somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, just something. I heard you on the
Yeah.
Empathy Edge, and I will
Y-
absolutely connect with you.
You stole my PSA because that's always my PSA.
Yeah.
When people give their LinkedIn, I say, send her a note about where you heard her so that she doesn't think you're
Yeah.
trying to sell her something. So,
I mean, when you have
yeah,
founder and CEO in your title, you are just
you're
everybody's
stalked.
trying to
Yeah.
get, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I
I
would
get it.
love to connect with people. Absolutely.
Right. Right. And I will just give the company a shout out, bash-creative.com. And again, we'll have
Yeah.
all the links in the show notes for you if you didn't get a chance to write them down. Annalee, it was such a pleasure to have you on today and have this conversation and hear about
Thank
all the great
you.
work you're doing.
I really appreciate it. It's wonderful. This is something I'm passionate, and I really appreciate being able to talk about it and share a bit more of what we do.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Please rate, review, and share it with a friend or a colleague. And until next time, please remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.